Hi, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, or good night, wherever you are in the world. We start program number one in my name, Carlo Zuccoli, Beyond the Age. You have just seen a black and white video featuring the mighty Nearco winning the Grand Prix de Paris in 1938. Nearco was bred, owned by Senatore Federico Tesio and Marchese Mario Incisa della Rocchetta under the banner Razza d'Ormello Giatta, and the horse was trained by Federico Tesio. I have to say that when Nearco went to stud, he changed completely the world of the modern thoroughbred. You have to bear in mind that over 90% of the horses running worldwide every day, they carry Nearco's blood. So that's the reason why this horse changed completely the world of thoroughbred. And the Senatore Federico Tesio, in my opinion, not only in my opinion, has been the greatest of them all, breeder, owners, and very likely trainer. Today, for the first program, I have the great pleasure and the honor to have as a guest Mr. Nick Rust. Nick Rust has been managing director of Ladbrokes PLC from 2011 to 2015. Has been chief executive officer of the British Horse Racing Authority, what we call the BHA, from 2015 to 2021. Then he resigned, and now he's a director of Redcar Racecourse. He chaired the industry forum at the Gambling Commission, and then is the founding partner of a GVS EQ, which is an equine sports and consulting business. You are very welcome, Nick. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you, Carlo.
I have to say that several years ago, after the Gold Cup at Ascot one day, it was very, very hot. I met Nick at the station. We both were completely exhausted because of the heating. We start chatting, and since then, I have to say that we became friends. I'm very happy to know you because you are a great guy. Let's start with a few questions. Generally speaking, about horse racing, betting, administration, and so on. As you know, Nick, nowadays, all the bookmaking companies, but Betfred, which is owned and run by the Dunn brother, and Star Sport, which is run and owned by Ben Keith, all the other companies are run, let's say, by, in bracket, accountants, appointed by the hedge funds, which are the owner of the major bookmaking company. I think, I don't know your opinion, that the art of bookmaking is nearly gone or is going. What do you think?
Well, I think it's been democratized, Carlo, hasn't it? Since the start of the exchanges in Britain and elsewhere in the late 1990s and early 2000s, everyone now feels that they can be a bookmaker. You can lay a bet, you can set your own odds. And that was the start of it, meaning that, there was no use anymore having the traditional approach to it for the off-course betting companies, because they needed to take into account, the power of the market, the strength in the numbers of people coming together to make their own odds, to offer their own odds, to take their own odds. So yes, I would agree with you that the traditional art of bookmaking, from concentrated in the hands of a few professionals who really understood it, has changed and has had to broaden out. The other thing is, of course, today, imagine trying to make your own odds on everything that is offered. I was looking at one sports book that I use over the weekend when all of the racing was happening here in Britain. But of course, the Euro 2024 matches were taking place. Tennis was on, golf was on. There were over. I looked it up, and there were over 13,000 events
My God.
that were on offer that day. Sorry, 13,000 markets that were on offer that day. Imagine trying to do that like in the old days. But really, Mike Dillon or some of the guys who worked in Ladbrokes back in the 80s and 90s, they focused on 3 or 4 horse races, and that's what they had to set the odds around. Imagine trying to do that for 13,000 events. You can't. So you need to have systems and algorithms. And, it's going to be fascinating to see where it goes, Carlo, because everyone's talking about AI. Will it change the world? Will it make things more efficient in certain areas? Will it cost people their jobs in other areas? I think in sports betting, it's a ripe area for AI, both for the people who offer the odds officially, like Ladbrokes and others, but also for people who bet. We're going to have access to even more tools. So, yes, I think the traditional bookmaker who's prepared to back their opinion, offer you a big bet before they move their odds and so on, I think it's very rare. If you can find one who can do that, it's probably going to be someone like me that gets the benefit of that, because I lose all the time. Unlike you, Carlo, I know you're a shrewd judge.
Sorry if
No one will lay you more than 10 euro.
Anyway, sorry if I interrupt you, but in my life, I had the pleasure to meet Series Dean, Ladbrokes, to meet Peter George, who was managing director for a long time, Dickie Gaskell, Victor Chandler, Michael Tabor, now he's retired. I think that all these people, of course, all of them, but Michael Tabor passed away many years ago. They will go mad seeing what's going on right now.
Yeah, I mean, they may do, but I think that, I didn't know some of those guys directly. I met Cyril Steen once, and I met Victor Chandler on one occasion as well. Their approach to it would be, in my view, would be insufficient now, just because there is so much to bet on and there are so many people willing to bet. But also, even bookmakers like Freddie Williams, if you've ever seen him, he passed away a few years ago, but famous racecourse bookmaker here in Britain who would famously stand a big bet for 6-figure sums on a regular basis, and he would put his opinion up. In effect, if you operate your business like that now, far from it being necessarily an advantage, you're pitting your own wit against the market in a way that you didn't have to do before. So I understand why things have changed. What I regret is that, irrespective of whether they put their own opinion up or use algorithms, people who want to have a bet should be allowed to have a bet to a reasonable size, And,
exactly.
And if you're worried about someone like you, Carlo, coming on and winning all the time from these bookmakers, then maybe they can just clip the odds a little bit for you,
right,
but still allow you a decent bet.
Anyway, it seems to me that since you left the BHA, all the other people who were appointed as chief executive officer, after a few months, they resign. And you resign as well in 2021. Why do you think that these things happen? Because every year we have a new chief executive officer at the BHA.
Well, I did six years there, which I think is the longest time for a chief executive at the BHA. Well, it is the longest time there. The predecessor bodies, I think there were some, chief execs with longevity beyond mine. It's not necessarily a good thing to be there a long time, but to have stayed there 6 years, I can tell you was great fun in many ways, but also very challenging. And at times frustrating, because the setup of racing in Britain, as you know, is that there isn't a dominant governing body. It governs by consent. The BHA is in effect owned by the racecourses, who are very powerful, and the thoroughbred group, the participants, so representatives of the trainers, the owners, the breeders, and the jockeys. And if the BHA wants to make a decision to make significant change in the sport, anything outside of day-to-day regulation, it needs the approval of its owners, in effect. So it can be quite a tricky situation trying to manage change. because you might have the best ideas in the world, you might have popular ideas even, but if you cannot bring those two groups along with you, then each group has the power of veto to stop things. One of the most obvious things, Carlo, that probably needs to happen in British racing is an overhaul of the fixture list. We have 60 race courses, but average field sizes continue to struggle. The long-term trend is a decline in field sizes. The number of races has increased a lot over the years, and actually, we need to reduce that. And there's an argument for saying that the central resources that the sport receives through media rights and through the horse race betting levy are being distributed amongst too many race courses potentially. So that's the sort of thing that can get discussed, and the chief executive of the BHA cannot bring it to bear, cannot make it happen by himself or with his board. He needs the approval, and of course that sort of thing is going to meet some resistance from potentially from racecourses who may lose some fixtures or think they may lose some fixtures and revenue. So those sorts of changes are difficult. So going into the job, it's not like if you were, I don't know, people talk about Barry Hearn here in Britain because he leads the darts and snooker and has revolutionized them. He's been able to do that, yes, because he's very talented, but also because he has been given all of the tools to do it, all of the responsibilities. Right. He can make those decisions. And I think what you're seeing is a frustration that British racing, I'm afraid, looks like it's starting to go on a path of a downward trend in terms of its popularity and its income. And people have made an effort to try and change things, and they find that they're unable to because the structure does not allow them to. So I think that's probably why you're seeing someone like my successor, Julie Harrington, has decided to leave. The chief executive of the Jockey Club, was trying to make some changes, but the revenue isn't there, and it seems that he's decided to step back because he can't make all the change that he wants to. So I think it's difficult until the people who have a stranglehold on the sport by their power of veto, until they give those powers over in some way, I think it will be difficult for British racing, unfortunately. I care passionately about it, but something needs to change in terms of the structure.
All right. Now we have a break. Don't go away. Stay with us. And then I have another question which might interest the people going racing and betting. The starting price. I know that the starting price now is calculated in a completely different way. Can you explain why?
Yes, I mean, up until 2020, when the pandemic came, the starting price was calculated by using a sample of the bookmakers who attend race courses.
Yes.
A sort of average of the prices within certain criteria that were being offered at the racecourse formed the starting price that would be used to settle a number of bets off course. When the pandemic came, when racing restarted in 2020 after a break, it was under the condition in Britain that you couldn't have crowds, and therefore there was no point in having bookmakers because no bets were being struck. That changed a little bit during the year, but for the first 3 or 4 months anyway, there were no bookmakers whatsoever, and so to form a starting price needed to be done in a different way. The Starting Price Commission, which I chair, this was before I chaired it, made the decision to go to a sample of off-course bookmakers and uses 7 off-course bookmakers who independently offer prices up to the off of the race and we take a sample of up to 6 for each race and use a method to calculate the median price within a group of 6 selected in a particular way for each race. So it's 100% based off course. The rules, however, for the starting price say that we can use an on-course price, but unfortunately at the moment, on-course bookmakers are not willing to let their prices be used because previously the racecourses paid them to use their data for the starting price. The Starting Price Commission has shown that it doesn't really need on-course prices, and in any case these days, according to official statistics at the Gambling Commission, only 1.5% of betting on British racing in Britain takes place at the course. So arguably, it makes more sense to go to a largely off-course market anyway.
Thank you very much. Now I want to talk about something which is very important, but that we don't have to be very long, but try to explain. We have this affordability check. This affordability check, in my opinion, is ruining English racing. And as Michael Table stated in an interview reported on the Racing Post the other day, he said, I had a few guests in my box during the royal meeting, people that they bet £300, £400, something like that, and they are now struggling. And then what is important, he said, every day the number of illegal bookmakers is growing enormously. So that means that the GPT gross profit tax 10%, which is the levy the bookmaker pays when they have a profit, will go down. And this money that should go right to the racing industry is diminishing all the time. So in a short period of time, what is your opinion? Sorry, if I wrote a letter on the Racing Post a few months ago, saying that the approach of the industry should have been completely different, saying that not confusing gaming with betting, talking about betting as an investment in the market, like the investment in the stock exchange, shares, commodities, or currencies. So probably this could help to sort the problem out. What's your opinion, Nick?
Well, very quickly, because you want me to be quick. First of all, British Racing argued strongly that levies should increase because people who bet on racing also bet on gaming, and that there should be some recognition for racing for the money delivered to bookmakers. So it's hard to separate things. There must be safeguards for people who bet, and it's a fact of life that we're seeing public concern and government concern brought to bear in policy and regulation. Unfortunately, the regulation is not yet in, Carlo. So what you're talking about and what you're observing is bookmaker behavior based on their own individual interactions with the Gambling Commission. So if they've not been doing their stuff right, the Commission has a discussion with them and the bookmaker makes a commitment about what they will do. And some of that has resulted in these checks. In my view, they are at too low a level. They may or may not prevent harm. And actually, if you intervene with a customer who genuinely has a problem, they still have, the assessment is made on that individual customer at that individual bookmaker. If the bookmaker then restricts their activity, they still have 2,500 more legal places that they can go and gamble. And when they've exhausted those, they're going to be going to the black market. And that's the real worry. Unless we have an overview of the customer as a whole and try and set a limit which is reasonable for them as a whole, the people who are genuinely at risk will end up at the black market, and those who have enjoyed betting on racing will do so less frequently, and as you've said, less money will go to racing.
The last question. During the Guinness meeting, there were 9 dogs checking people for drugs. I tried to go to the toilet. There is one just outside the press room, and the entrance was blocked by 2 huge policemen. One was a lady. So I asked, what's going on? They say, you're not allowed to go in because there is a dog inside. I say, a dog? Yeah. So I say, well, a dog checking people for drugs. I told the 2 policemen, in my opinion, you should send the dogs to the waiting room and to the stables, Because who cares if Mr. John Smith goes racing and he takes drugs? That doesn't make any sense. Who cares? What is important to check the jockeys and to check the horses. And I sent an email to the Racing Post saying, in America, the TDN, the Thoroughbred Daily News, every Wednesday or Thursday, they publish all the names trainers, jockeys fined for various reasons, including doping. You should do the same. Unfortunately, the answer of this guy was you should log in to the BHA website. But the man in the street, the man in the betting shop, doesn't log in to the British horse racing website, so they are blind. In the UK, nobody knows if there is a doping problem for the horses or something like that. This is not good for me.
Yeah, I mean, the public consumption of drugs seems to be an issue generally, and I know that the racecourses are looking to pick up on that. It goes back to the structure of racing again. The racecourses are separate, and they think they've got a perception issue, which they do, I think, with regard to drugs at racecourses, and they're trying to deal with it. With regard to weighing room checks, probably 1 in 5, 1 in 6 meetings, there will be some kind of check on the jockeys, be it an alcohol check or a drug check, as far as I'm aware. So that is taking place. Publicizing it, I agree that perhaps more can always be done on this. But there have been significant cases with the jockeys, being caught, unfortunately, using drugs which may affect them. On the horses side of things, it's difficult. One of the early lessons for me at the BHA was I met a coach of an international sports team, Humans, who told me about their policy around microdosing with drugs to try and understand, what they could legally get away with in that particular sport. And it opened my eyes to how things might take place for those who wish to cause problems in racing as well. So the BHA and others are only ever catching up with the latest drugs and trying to catch up with what's going on. The people who wish to dope will be one step ahead. I don't think there's a huge issue, but I think that that arguably there should be more people being caught than are at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Nick. You have been very kind to be with me. And now I will tell the viewers that the next program will be on air on July the 8th at 7:30 Central European Time. And I will have the great honor and pleasure to have a special guest, Mr. Aidan O'Brien. So I look forward to talking to Aidan, and I wish to thank you once again, Nick, for being with me for all this time. Thank you very much, and see you soon.
Thank you.
Perché non va?